Hello and welcome to Exotic Garden UK Yorkshire Kris Weekly, and on this week's episode we're looking at jobs to do in the exotic garden in August. Now we're in August. It should be a nice warm month, and it normally is a decent in terms of temperatures, especially nighttime temperatures hovering around 14-15 degrees at night, which means we get growth 24 hours a day. Obviously in the daytime we get sunshine hopefully, and plants will be getting all that light and photosynthesizing, getting energy to grow bigger, but at night time it's still warm and they can actually do a lot of growth as well. But August is often a month where we get lots of rain, and it's not always the driest month of the year, even though it's in summer, which is great for the garden because it means we get lots of water as well as warmth, as well as sunlight. So plants like these bananas and these gingers are growing at their maximum rate in August. So in this episode we're going to be looking at a few jobs to do in August. But to be honest, if you want, like I said in my July video, you can do pretty much nothing in August. You've done all the hard work of getting your plants through winter, propagated into the ground, growing well, and now you can relax and enjoy your exotic tropical garden. But if you want to do some jobs, here are some things you can be doing in the garden in August. Now, if you grow dahlias, you probably know what I'm going to say now, and that is to keep them flowering throughout the season, you need to cut back the spent blooms. So we've got some lovely dahlias here, they're blooming well right across the plant, but the flowers only last a few days, but there's lots of flowers to come, and we need to get rid of the old spent flowers. And you can tell the difference between a spent bud and a flower that's yet to emerge by the shape of it. So one that we've had that's already flowered is pointy, and the ones that haven't flowered yet are button shaped and round. So we just go get the old flowers, go back as far as we can to a growth point, just cut that off, and we leave the nice button shaped ones to emerge as flowers over the next few days. And we're going to continue doing this process every 2 or 3 days right through August and then into September and October as well, to prolong the flowering period. Now into August, all these lush tender plants, the annuals that put on loads of growth all in one season, and things like the bananas, the cannas, colocasias, they're really growing very, very strongly now, and all that quick soft growth means that they can flop over when we've had a bit of heavy rain or windstorms and things like that. So when we get to August, things really might need a bit of a helping hand to carry on looking good throughout the rest of the season. So things like this Tiphonia here, with its quite interesting shaped leaves, it's grown nice and big, yet to flower, but you can see it's bent over quite a long way. It was planted over there and it's arched forward. It's getting ready to flower now. Because of the heavy winds, it's sort of flopped over a bit. So things like this could be staked if you want them to be away from the edge of paths, or so they're not falling on lower plants like what's happening here. But you can sort of get away with it if you've got a big wide border for plants to sort of sprawl everywhere, all over each other. If you want a bit of neatness, a bit of control, you may want to put some canes around this, or some sort of metal wire that's quite sturdy, bend it round, and then you get like a hoop shape and prongs in the ground, and you can put that in to hold these plants back, just so you can see everything underneath and to stop these flopping anymore. And it goes for lots of other plants in the garden. So things like the bananas are totally fine. So the sunset is fine. But behind us we've got the Gunnera manicata, and that just gets bigger and bigger through spring into midsummer. Now into August it doesn't really get any bigger, but the biggest leaves might be over paths if you're limited for space, so you might want to prop them up. I've done that with a chair. I've just propped up one of the biggest leaves so that it's not overhanging the path, otherwise nobody can get through the garden. So as we're getting into all this maximum amount of growth, and especially the soft growth we get from these sort of plants, it's really, really good to support them as much as possible if you need to keep them away from the edge of paths and from sprawling onto other plants. Here we have another example of a plant that needs control on, and that's this Miscanthus giganteus sacrifolius grass, which I planted either side of this walkway, and I control it by just getting my clippers, getting down to the base and just cutting the ones that are too close to the path, like this, and also just getting individual leaves and just clipping them back as well, just so you can get past. Because of all this growth, especially on a wet day like it has been this morning, you can just walk down this path and you get absolutely soaking, so it's good just to keep on top. And it's amazing how quickly these grow, so I've clipped this quite a few times, and July, August into September is when you got the maximum growth from these types of plants, and you've got to keep on top of clipping them back so you don't get wet on a wet day going past on your paths. Now we're in August, we can still think about feeding our plants, but if you want to, you can relax and not feed plants at all for the rest of the year and they'll be fine. They won't get the maximum growth potential out of your plants, but they'll still look good throughout the rest of the season, especially if you've been feeding them well in spring and early summer. But if you want to continue the growth and maximise growth of your tender plants especially, like your cannas and your bananas, you can continue feeding them right through August with a weekly or a fortnightly liquid feed, seaweed fertiliser, and sort of chemical feeds if you wish to use chemical feeds like that as well, that are water soluble, and you can just sort of sprinkle them on or you can water them in. But if you've got palm trees and you've been feeding them through spring and summer, August is a time to sort of stop feeding those plants. If you continue feeding sort of hardy-ish palm trees and hardy palm trees and shrubs in September and October, then you'll get lots of sort of sappy growth. You might get lots more growth in autumn, getting into early winter, but that'll be cut back even if the hardy plants by frost and severe winters, because the leaves will be softer and more tender than if you didn't feed them. So it's best to stop August feeding plants that are in the ground, that are hardy, that are like palm trees and things like that. But continue, if they're in pots, you can continue feeding them if you're going to bring them indoors over winter, because obviously they won't face the frosts. But anything that's hardy, that's fed for maximum growth, I would say end of August is the last time you should be feeding them for most of the UK, just because you don't want them to be damaged by frosts in winter from their latest leaves. But if you've got things like these bananas around me, you can feed these all through August, all through September, all the way to the first frost basically, because they're going to continue growing as well as they can do as long as you feed them and we get warm throughout the season. And obviously things like the onset bananas will be bringing in for winter anyway, so it doesn't matter if you continue feeding them right through the season. Thank you for watching this edition of Exotic Gardening UK. Join me next week, we'll be doing more in the garden.